All right. So now we are going to get into the dialogue. Gary, I'm gonna yield to you to give the overview of the conversation and what we're going to talk about. But what I do know is, y'all, this is about to be good. Some of my most favorite folks are going to be in conversation, and so I'm excited, and I hope that you're excited too. Now I hand it over to Mr. Gary Daffin, who is the executive director of the Multicultural AIDS Coalition, to lead us in conversation. Gary.
Thank you, Chioma. Again, my name is Gary Daffin. I'm the executive director at MAC in Boston. And we are really excited to have this year-end conversation. Perhaps not so excited about the content or what's going on, but we need to talk about where we've come and think a little bit about where we're going and how we need to get there. So we have invited some folks who were um, discussants throughout the year in one of our many very interesting, fascinating conversations to think about or just give their sort of take on where we're at and you know what we've done well, what we've done not so well, and what we still need to do. So let's jump right in. We have four great participants, Alicia, Rashawn, Dazon, and Catherine. So why don't I let you guys just introduce yourselves quickly first, and then we can jump into the first question. Um, Dazon, you want to start?
I guess so. The spotlight popped up, so I guess
I
that
know.
is
I was like,
all right now. Hello, greetings, everyone. What is it? Aquaba. I am Dazon Dixon Jallo, founder and president of Sister Love. We're 36-year-old sexual and reproductive health rights and justice organization based in Atlanta and in Johannesburg. Gratefully coming to you from 90 degrees in Accra today in Ghana. Um, we deliver services in the way of health education. We have a mobile clinic as well as a testing linkage to care, and now a mobile prep service, prep, PEP, and eventually treatment in the coming months. We also do a lot of policy and advocacy work. We have shifted from doing more civic engagement to doing justice law and policy work. So we're actually standing up legal services. I'm also and we conduct community-led research, and I am a co-chair of Act Now End AIDS Coalition. I am a co-founder of Sister Song, and I'm a proud Georgian by birth.
great. How about Rashawn?
Well, I'm jealous of my sister friend Dazon and the 90-degree weather there in Accra because I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, where
Mm.
we're having a heat wave today, 30 degrees and 6 inches of snow yesterday. So, uh, very
Listen.
jealous. Yeah, I wish I had a chance to miss it too. But hello, I'm D. Rashawn Gilmore, founder, president, and CEO of Blackout here in Kansas City, Missouri. We are a multifaceted health justice organization, really focused on the Black LGBT community writ large. We were founded in 2017 and really um, based our origins in community-based participatory action research, and so that is a lot of what drives our work here. And I will also just say that our 5 year our purpose plan, or what some may call a strategic plan, has as its chief cornerstone research. In fact, it's the acronym REACH, so research, engagement, and for us, yes, it includes the proprietary interventions that we developed and empowerment programs, but it is also just Black queer folk being able to come together and share space socially and communally. Then, thirdly, the A being for advocacy, and really, we also view art as advocacy. So, all of our policy work is housed there, and I'm happy to share that we'll be soon in the next couple of months announcing a new national initiative around advocacy policy work for our community. So I'm really excited about that. The C is care, but at Blackout, we talk about it as being our culture of care. It's not just the actual services that are provided in the clinic that we operate here in Kansas City or in the one that we fund fully in Kampala, Uganda, but it really is about the ethos within which that care is provided, how people see us, how they feel about their experience, a multisensorial kind of environment when they come to us. And then lastly, housing, and that as a means of wealth creation for our community, not just as a means of shelter. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. Honored to be among such an esteemed group here. And I'll just also lastly add that in my other life, I have a career in media, both television and radio. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Catherine?
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine. My pronouns are she, her. I am Nigerian, born in New York, raised in London, currently joining from Brooklyn, New York. If it was 2 days ago, I would have been joining from Nigeria. So I'm bringing the heat and energy of home to this call. I am a writer, social justice advocate, and also the founder of Catherine Bisola Labron Consulting. I have the honor of supporting different organizations and collectives doing work around racial justice, gender justice, and migrant justice, and thinking about the intersections between these issues, and also thinking about where our bodies land as we are doing this work and how we can think about healing and somatics work so that we're not forgetting our bodies and becoming too cerebral as we navigate tough terrain, especially in the current socio-political climate. So I serve as a consultant, coach, and I also try and weave in the arts and creativity in how we are thinking about our approach to ensure that we are delivering in a way that's engaging and accessible and true to our cultural backgrounds.
Excellent. And last but not least, Leisha.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am Leisha McKinley Beach. I'm residing in the beautiful home that Dazon referenced as Georgia. It is not living up to its name as Hot Atlanta, more like really cold Atlanta. But there is just a spirit just right now, I think, that is making it very warm. And we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that for what we witnessed for World AIDS Day. Um, wear a lot of hats, a part of a lot of groups, but I think if I wanted someone to remember anything about me, it is by far the necessity around uplifting and supporting community. I am a believer that those of us who are closest to the problem are the folks that are the ones closest to the solution. And we got to keep finding ways to make sure that we are in the right place to have our say to make these changes happen. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, all of you. And it's a little, I'm actually down in Alabama, not Boston, where I thought I would be escaping for some warm weather as well. But it is right now 45 degrees, which is not generally what is happening. So it's quite curious that although the United States is unusually cold at the moment, so that's where we're starting our conversation, a cold country, both in weather and in heart, perhaps. So to start, the first question really is a basic question. You know, over the course of the couch conversations that we've had, we've discussed erasure, burnout, underfunding, anti-Black policies, and the need for community resilience. And we wanted to start the conversation with just the basic question of what's your sense of where we are? Has anything changed in the past 10 months? In the political landscape, the policy landscape, in our work, our strategies, what's been your experience of that period? And where do you think we are right now? Who wants to start? Or do you think we're just fine and we can just move on?
I'll jump in, Gary, and just say that I really do think, and that's a great question, by the way, because it calls for some introspection and self-reflection. But I think, honestly, we're obviously at an inflection point. everything has changed. There used to be that popular book and the, podcast, I think at one point, Who Moved My Cheese? I mean, the whole everything, everything has been moved. And I think for a lot of our organizations, we need to be taking a much more, let me rephrase that. I think that uh, many of us would do well to take a much deeper look into our work and to our organizational structures and stability, and really assess if we have what it takes on every level for what is going to be required of us next. And I mean that at the most upper echelon of leadership levels. If you are CEO, especially if you're a founder, are you feeling connected to your vision like you once were? But we all are trying to navigate waters of change, whether it's regarding funding or the politics of things. I just really see an immense amount of burnout. And we talk a lot about self-care, but I want to shift the conversation a little bit around that, because I think a lot of time what gets passed as or passed off as self-care is really aftercare. Self-care is what you do so that you don't hit the brick wall. Aftercare is what you do after you've hit the brick wall and there's a ton of bricks laid on top of you, and you're trying to climb out from that and then find a chance to rest and restore yourself. And just last little bit I'll share. I yesterday just returned from a sabbatical, and I didn't realize until I was on a warm, sunny beach one day and I just stared off into the sky and it hit me. You didn't even know how bad off you were. You didn't even know how much you needed this. And it scared the crap out of me because I could have just completely just collapsed from all the weight, all the work, all the pressure. And so I just want to encourage leaders to really step back and take an honest self-assessment. One of the things I often say, and I need to live into it more, is that I belong to me first, not to my lover, partner, family, community. I belong to me first. How are you taking care of yourself so that you can lead through all this change and the very difficult work that's going to be ahead of us? Because we're going to be fighting not to get ahead, but to even reclaim a lot of what has been taken from us. I know that was a lot, but again, I'll just couch it by saying we really need to be thinking clearly and soberly about if we are ready for what lies ahead. And if we're not, what does that mean for our organizations? What does that mean for our movement? What does that mean for the leadership pipelines that may or may not be developed and have any volume flowing through it? We've got some tough questions to ask ourselves, conversations among each other about, hey, maybe we should be talking about a merger, or maybe we should be talking about how we strengthen and support each other's work. I think those are things that are missed in this conversation more broadly. So I'm glad that you brought it up in that first question, Gary.
Yeah, so Gary, listening to your question, three things just kind of surfaced for me around policy, culture, and advocacy. And I'm going to start with the one that gives me most joy, and that is around advocacy. Yesterday, when I saw all of the events and the storytelling and the press releases for World AIDS Day, after an administration says that we are not going to commemorate World AIDS Day, it was clear to me that community had spoken. You do not dictate an observance that you did not create. That's that type of advocacy that is going to sustain us, and as we come together as a united front about the HIV movement, what it is that we are moving, and who is helping to move us to that desired place with getting to the end of new HIV diagnosis. And so I was telling my husband, he kept saying, "Are you all right?" Just wander off into space. And I said, the song that like keeps coming up for me is an old spiritual song that says, like a tree planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. I said that was the experience yesterday. That was what was in the atmosphere yesterday. We're not moved by some of this crazy rhetoric that has happened. We're planted and we're grounded for our community. I do think, though, as we begin to look at policy, and so I'm very grateful to have Max be a part of our conversation on today. That there are some folks that are going to be in unique positions that are going to help mobilize us to address some of these policy changes there. And as it relates to culture, there are going to be some of us like the Daisons who have had this rich legacy of what these challenges are and how we have overcome them. I feel like we start to get a little stuck at the challenge, not realizing that we got a legacy to show how we've overcome some of these challenges. And we're going to have to get back to that place of listening to wisdom and elders that have gone through and they have made it through. And what are some of the tools that they came out of the fire with that we also need to be incorporating for this moment we are in?
Dazon, Catherine, do you want to jump in? Unmute.
Could easily just come in and say dittos and dittos and be fully satisfied that I've shared what is on my mind. Thank you, Rashawn. Thank you, Leisha. And thank y'all for holding this conversation. United we rise. So in some ways, I'm feeling like that old NAACP adage that said something like much has changed and much has not. And so when you ask about where we are now and what sense we're in, it's one of those things where throughout regardless of which government was doing what they were doing or not doing for the last 40 something years, for Black folk, it still never really was about us, wasn't meant to be about us, wasn't built for us. People are still trying to figure out how we've even achieved what we've achieved in terms of building our organizations and leading in this movement and being a part of what has changed, not only for us and our people, but for everybody because we changed things for our people. And at the same time, we're always still playing catch up. Now, we want to talk about not just catch up, but catch me, right? That where we are, instead of talking about meeting people where they are, a lot of times we have to think about meeting people where they want to be met. That's my old adage, my old mantra. And what that means is that we, even in terms of what that looks like for meeting people where they want to be met, means we have to do a lot more listening. We do a lot of internal conversations with ourselves, but the average everyday person in our communities is not living, thinking, and breathing around this HIV issue. So how do we know that we're meeting them where they want to be met when where they want to be met is in realizing how they're going to survive all of these changes in this administration and what we're doing about that, right? So intersectionality has become even more important for us in this moment. Taking HIV off of that exceptional shelf that it's been on for 40 something years, because that serves another community. But in terms of us, we eat gumbo. We eat jollof rice. We eat a combination of things at the same time because that's how our lives are going. And when I say eat, we ate that. We ate the issue around housing and we eat the issue around violence in our communities at all levels and in all kinds of ways. Now we're having to deal with where we were before the ACA came about in terms of helping people figure out and navigate their health care. And the reason that so many of us, and that whole announcement about 340B that just came out today, the lawsuit, the reason that a lot of us are here where we are now, right, is because we did figure out how to make some of these systems work for us, by us. And that carpet is looking like they want to snatch that away. So now we'll be back in, whether it's about these premiums getting ready to go up on everybody, 175 average percent in January, which also will hit everybody since Ryan White has shifted and is paying premiums. Can they continue to afford that? 340B, if that goes in a different direction where we're no longer to sustain ourselves by the fact that we have figured out how to be our own clinical providers. All of these kinds of things that Rashawn is talking about, not only in structure, but it's also in the practice of being in and with community and understanding what their real needs are and where that alignment with our own real needs are. And I'm saying that because Sister Love picked a funny year to make some pivots, right? We picked a funny year to go in some different directions for our own sustainability. And I still think that those are important pivots to make, but doing it at a time when all of the opportunities are being either snatched away, redefined, misaligned, whatever you want to call it, are no longer immediately in our pathway. So what do we have to do? The other part, just in terms of not just self-care, but self-realization, self-awareness, um, not just reflection, but introspection. Love that question about, I think that was you, Rashad, about as founders or as these long in the tooth directors, are we still connected? And I'm going to say I'm connected, but in a different way, right? I'm connected in a different way because I'm aging and I know we're all aging, but I'm 60 this year, so that's real aging. And I'm almost at a certain designation. And so, what it says to me is that the wisdom that I still think I'm young, but the wisdom that comes with being around this long has to have a role, it has to have a place. And at the same time, figuring out how to make that space for what's changing for us and with us and by us. So the idea of resiliency, y'all know we debate that word a lot, especially as Black women. Black women, we're not just resilient. I think there's a word in us that we have not yet really activated, other than, of course, the amazing activism that Max described, which is our resistance. Our resistance to whatever it is that is put in front of us, meant to erase us, meant to diminish us, meant to hold us down, meant to kill us. Let us be very clear, meant to kill us. We refuse to die. We refuse to get out of the way. We refuse to go away. And we refuse to not go in our own way. And so I think that that's really what we have to do is continue to be together, continue to be strategic in that togetherness, regardless of what the structure is going to look like, regardless of how we're going to get each other, because that's the other part we have to do. The real deal is how we make sure that we're using this moment to realign ourselves with what the real goal is, which it may be about ending HIV. We don't end HIV for Black folk until we find liberation. And so this is about liberation. This is about revolutionary change. And I'm going to tell y'all one more thing, not just because I'm sitting on the continent and not just because my amazing, beautiful sister Catherine is going to bring it in from where she sits and all of that. But the other thing, Black folk, and if y'all didn't see from what just happened, I'm in South Africa for the most part, what just happened with the G20, you know what? We don't realize what we can do until we don't have what we thought we needed, right? So, this whole idea that we're going to fix HIV problem in Black folk in the US without figuring out how to align with Black folk everywhere, including and especially on the continent, we're not going to get that far. The power of the future of this fight is not in the US. It is not. And so until and when we figure that collective action out across the waters, across the borders, across the cultures, across the languages, and across the inequities in the economies, we are not going to win. And so that's the biggest issue for me that I have just come down and smashed it through this year is that we are all African and we are all the first people and we are all the ones to save ourselves, and it won't be country by country, it will be people by people, and that's what we have to carry forward from this very bizarre experience and how we rebuild. And how we rebuild cannot be based on the structures, the cultures, the historical spaces that we have been trying to morph into our own lives. We are the square peg in a round hole called America, and what we have to do is dig a new hole.
Catherine.
Yeah, thank you all so much for such important insights. In Yoruba culture, we say, well, one of our proverbs is that you do not hide your nakedness from the people that will bury you. So you do not hide your nakedness from people who will bury you. And I think that that is something that I have noticed manifest in different ways. This way in which we have been called to develop new forms of intimacy with each other due to the harsh, oppressive socio-political climate where I cannot hide my messiness. I cannot hide the fact that I'm in pieces. I cannot hide the fact that I am fearful for Black migrants across the country, for queer and trans people across the country, for people living with HIV across the country, that there is a new way that we have organized cultures of care because we know, and we have always known, but we especially know in this moment that we are all that we have to rethink how we are moving money and resources and being on the ground and making sure that that elder has groceries and making sure that we are thinking about holistic forms of healthcare. So despite being in the eye of the storm, which I think many people rightfully think that they are in this moment, I've seen very ingenious, liberatory, innovative ways that people are thinking about caring for themselves. And part of this culture of care that I have seen is that even when I cannot see what I need, my sisters are able to locate that care for me. Because Rashaan, you mentioned, going on that sabbatical and being like, wow, I needed that. And I also know so many people maybe don't even know that they need that thing, but it's our friends, our community, the networks that we are situated in that can tell us, like, I can see that you are not yourself. So I want more of that for us, more ways in which we can think about building that trust, building that intimacy and leaning into it. And I'm seeing that more and more in spaces that we are moving against the boundaries around what professional and personal life has been dictated, that it should look like. Like we are decolonizing these binaries and ways in which we are supposed to leave ourselves at the door. We are bringing that into the workplace, and that's allowing us to have new and liberatory ways of being. I will also say that we have been trying to think about moving away from performative partnerships. Days you were mentioning like the need for global Black solidarity and the fact that we are all our people. And I've been seeing the ways in which people on the ground here have been saying that, yes, we need to fight in defense of Haiti, Congo, Sudan. And we're not going to stop saying this. We're not going to stop saying that Trump mentioning invading Nigeria is bullshit. Like, we are not going to stop. We know that we need to protect us because that's all that we have. So I think that there has been hope despite, and we've done a good job of holding diverse emotions at the same time. We've done a good job of saying that we are grieving, and yet Black joy is important, and Black joy has always existed, that we are a product of Black joy. We are descendants of ancestors who believed in Black joy. We have inherited this ability, even if it's a grain of joy, that joy is in us right now and it will blossom into bigger forms of joy in the future. So I think that we have an immaculate capacity for being able to hold all the things as Black people.
Catherine, I need your Cash App so I can send you a love offering. You gave me so many gems. I had my head
I
down the
know,
entire
right?
time
I
taking
know.
notes.
That
Thank
one
you.
phrase we need to just send out to everybody. You cannot hide your nakedness from the people who will bury you. That's quite powerful. Oh, and Desan, we had gumbo for Thanksgiving here. So, and other things too. But
So did we.
anyway,
We
so
had the one with all the things, and then we have the one with just the things for pescatarians and vegetarians. I was very happy.
we don't have those in my family. I tried once, they all looked at me like, what the hell? Anyway, so you all have woven in all of our questions. But the two categories that I hear strongly are intersectionality, which we talk a lot about. We don't dive into that a little bit, but also infrastructure. And the two I think are related. So let's talk a little bit about intersectionality, which is, has become the buzzword of everybody and everybody. But I think this year we have seen policy shifts that target the most vulnerable Black people, whether it's women, immigrants, transgender and other LGBTQ people, poor people, even people with substance use, which people don't generally see what's happening there. So I guess it's so important to how we do work, as many of you have just mentioned. I guess we want to talk a little bit about like how are we or how should we be linking across movements and across populations? I mean, you touched on a little bit, but just wondering if you've seen more of that this year or where you think we need to be going in terms of, how do we make this concept of intersectionality more real, particularly across Black communities as we focus on HIV, but I think as Dizon is saying, like I think all are saying, there's other things as well. So how should we be linking across movements and what kinds of cross movement strategies do you think we need to be thinking about or making happen?
So I'll take a dive into that because you're right. The term intersectionality, because I can tell you from, let's just say from when was it, June 22nd or July, whatever the Supreme Court decision to uh, end Roe versus Wade happened. The first thing that we were all saying was, this is not where it's going to stop. It's going to be everybody in all the margins that you just described. And what I said first was, y'all, the far right, the anti-democratic, because that's what we're talking about, um, they have figured out intersectionality and they've got that going to town on all of us. They don't always agree, and they're certainly not that organized. They just have the money to look organized, but they coming for everybody, right? And so the intersectionality isn't the thing, it is a framing, but the thing is connectedness, right? How are we connecting all of our dots? How are we connecting the fact that for a lot of us, the same folks that are battling diabetes, battling housing, battling being who they are and still getting the work they need to get and love who they need to love and live where they want to live and eat what they want to eat and be as healthy as they can be are also having sex. They're also engaging in everyday things that everyone does, but because of all the other things that are in our way, they can't see through to how to stop HIV. So it's not as important. So, how are we connecting? I give you an example, real interesting. Big Money just came out. This is on a whole nother situation because we're in South Africa and we've been deeply challenged on this end simply because of all of the other funding cuts. Not to mention that South Africa is persona non grata to this current administration right now. Um, so we got invited to submit for a grant around lung cancer.
Mm.
It's a huge issue, right? And first I was like, that's mission creep. But you know what? People who smoke cigarettes and people who have tobacco exposures and people who have lung cancer, what else do? They have sex. But not only that, the systems that we have built to educate community, to get community screened, to get to people. I agree, having to follow the money, but how do you do that without mission creep, right? And so what I started thinking about is why not us? Because what they need is community engagement. People like us who've done the HIV work, we've written the book on community engagement. They need folks who can do screening and connect and link people to care and treatment. The hell if that hasn't been the whole mantra of our work for, 40 years. So why not us figure out how to connect what we're already doing and make sure that the same people are getting screened for some of these other things. Doesn't mean that we're trying to step into and now fight a movement. There's not a movement around lung cancer, as far as I know, but there is a movement around Black health and well being. There's a movement around Black liberation. And if I'm not healthy and if I'm not alive, then how can I be a part of that freedom movement? So the connections are what are important. How are we connecting, as Catherine was saying, not just performatively, but connecting our lived histories and our stories, our own, putting all of our Sankofas in a basket, right? And figuring out what it is we're learning together in the present that we need to build for our future. Um, Afrofuturism is about figuring out the connections, right? It is about making sure that we see all of the pieces because we're designing a different world for ourselves that cannot be rooted in systems that were never built to save us, to serve us, or to keep us alive. And so that's the reality of what intersectionality means to me. I mean, I'm in reproductive justice, and how can it just dawn on us in language and in the presentation of it that abortion is maternal health,
Mm.
right? We speak about it in the way of reproductive health. It's about choice. It's about this. It's about a pregnancy is a pregnancy to be prevented, a pregnancy to be managed, a pregnancy to be delivered safely, or a pregnancy to be terminated, whatever it is, the maternal aspects of that are real. We never really made that connection because we were trying to fight in one lane for so long. So, what that has said to us is that we can have a whole different conversation about what Black maternal health looks like. And that includes ending HIV. It includes having access to abortion and contraception. It includes mental health and well being. It includes making sure that doulas and midwives have the same legal opportunities to practice their crafts as nurses and doctors. Those are the connections that we also have to figure out in the practical everyday world of trying to do HIV prevention, treatment, care, advocacy, and support.
Mhm.
Gary, if I may just briefly, I just want to dovetail what Dazan shared because I think you hit a number of really important points there, and I think that in direct response to your question, Gary, I think that we need to really explore much more deeply and critically this connection between this nexus between uh, intersectionality and infrastructure, and that led me to thinking that the and again, I'm going to stipulate in advance that I'm going to say it the way I hear it and say it the way it's in my soul. And I understand that earns me, a listing on the blacklist. I don't get invited back, then I'll understand. But I think as Black people, certainly as Black queer people or Black people who have layered identities and intersectionality, we need to remember who the fuck we are. And I say that as emphatically as I do, not in a gratuitous fashion, but because I think we have to remember that we know how to navigate hard times, but we also know how to innovate, how to be industrious, how to create, and how to come up with solutions to our problems that nobody else could think of. And so I really feel like the solutions to our problems are as expansive as the culture, the history, and the identities that we all are and represent. And so it should not be some novel idea, although it is what Dazan shared about pursuing these lung cancer grants. I think we need to be a little bit more industrious. I think we need to be, if we're going to talk about having an infrastructure that can sustain us through these times and prepare us for what comes next so that we can keep serving communities, then we absolutely have to have a mindset that is looking at social entrepreneurship or in other social capitalistic type ventures that move us in ways that we are not so dependent on federal funding or the whims of corporations who are with us when they are with us. Now, I'm happy to take Pharma's check. I sure am. And I'll cash it twice if I could. But I don't want to ever be dependent on that. That's not the source of my supply because that can change with the wind. Now, we may not be seeing it as visibly, noticeably as, say, a target, but we've got to be clear that our future belongs to us. How we get there is our choice, and who we allow to be a part of that journey in support of it is also our decision as well. But we need to be thinking way differently outside the box. Is it mission creep? No, it's survival. It is survival. And you can't fight the battle if you're not alive. And so I just want to say that we need to shift our thinking a little bit to think about the infrastructures that we have in place and how we can adapt that for the world that is as we prepare for and build the world that is to come, not just with this current regime. I refuse to call it an administration. There's nothing about governance these people are interested in. It is a regime they want to control and annihilate us. We have the key, the solution, the answer to every problem that ails us. I'm not saying we don't need others, but we certainly shouldn't start there. Our reliance has to be on us, and there is no resiliency, there is no resistance until you have that self-reliance and then that communal reliance as well.
Yeah.
And so
Catherine,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, Catherine, in our conversation, the immigration conversation, one of the things that came up and was repeated was this concept that Blackness and immigration rarely share space. And I'm just thinking in terms of we're thinking about, infrastructure and intersectionality. Part of what we've got to do is really educate Black communities, non-immigrant Black communities about, not only sharing infrastructure, but really thinking differently about like who we are all together. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts about the.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And as we mentioned in that conversation, there is a deep invisibilization of Black migrant existence, let alone struggles and the needs that we have to organize ourselves, the resources that we need, the ways in which people are literally fighting for survival right now. And I took some time to think about it, and for me, it has some kind of similarity with how Black women in hospitals, their pain is denied. And as a Black woman, descendant of Nigerian migrants, I'm also holding like that intersection of like there is an invisibilization that happens when you think about the plight of Black migrants in this country as well. So as we are thinking about organizing and the spaces that need to be created, I think it needs to go beyond amplifying the experiences to thinking about how we ensuring that Black migrants are included when we are talking about reproductive justice, when we are talking about gender, climate, housing, all of the different issue areas, so that we can move beyond kind of more surface levels, ways of thinking about migrant justice. And I think there's been like an increase in thinking about it with this administration, but like what was mentioned earlier, with all US administrations, there has been xenophobia as a constant. So how are we thinking about ourselves beyond borders? How are we thinking about global solidarity so that people are not criminalized due to their backgrounds, due to where their home country is, and so on? So I think that that is like extremely important to have as a consistent focus rather than something that comes up due to headlines and the ways in which different issues are sensationalized.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leisha?
Yeah, so Gary, I just want to go back, just center your question for 30 seconds. And it really is the focus of United We Rise that is the center. And that is every Black body, period.
Mm.
And so if that becomes the base, right? If that becomes our base, we're not letting anyone be left behind. What we create is for every Black body. Then there's some truths that we got to be unapologetic about saying. One of those truths is this infrastructure was never designed for us. Rashad or Dazon said it may be both in different ways. It was never designed for us. So why am I upset and floored by the dismantling of it? It hasn't served us well. So if it hasn't served us well, what we got to do in this moment of everything that's in the rubble and the ashes is reimagine how we are building it back for every Black body.
Yes.
That's going to mean we got to think about this differently as well. We are going to have to transform even how we see holistic health. Catherine and Dazon have talked about more than the domestic model of the US. What does it look like if every Black body centers a global perspective? Right? Where are the champions in different spaces? Because here is also our truth. Some of us will be able to go out and venture and have entrepreneurship that will create healthy models, and kudos to those of us who are in that space. But there will be some who will need to remain in health departments. There will be some who will need to remain in federal government. There will be some, and bless their heart and keep a lot of prayer on them, that do need to stay in the administration so that they know what's going on and can share with us in how we design what our next approach is. Somebody in the chat said, so now what? Will, what's the next step? We got to be asking ourselves that both individually, because we don't always talk about that. There is an accountability for every Black body as well. We all play a part in this. But there's also a collective accountability in how we are also moving forward. That's it, Gary. I'm done. I'm just going to feast on what else is said for the rest of the day.
No,
Sorry,
actually,
can I
you
add
remind.
something?
Go ahead. Yep.
I just wanted to add on this conversation around cross-movement strategies and like ways that we can actually land the plane. One thing that I notice is the way that philanthropy kind of makes the conditions to which people feel like they have to own a thing. Like our organization is I don't know, we are the experts on this particular issues. And I think that there is a level setting and like a humility that we need to hold back onto when we are thinking about how we have come to know what we know, so that we can, yes, acknowledge our excellence, but then also acknowledge the fact that we have inherited wisdom from all of these streams of thought. So who are we to think that we cannot hold this with a light hand and open our hands and share and reimagine with others? Because what I hear a lot in spaces is ego and the fact that we have to have our name on this, our logo on this, and that makes it impossible for actual partnership. So one of the ways I've seen this happening well is when people acknowledge it and decide to not put branding on things because this is actually the people's knowledge. I have learned a lot from my mum, my grandmother, my sister, all of these different people. So if I'm saying that I am the sole custodian of this form of knowledge, then I'm doing that ancestry of information a disservice. And I'm also doing the possibility of deep partnership a disservice as well. So I think there is a balance between, yes, we should be acknowledged, especially historically, Black people being erased from authorship and all these different kinds of things, especially what we see in like research and, the
Oh, yeah.
arts and creativity. And at the same time, this is the people's information and we are doing this for people. So therefore, how can we move differently?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you both remind me of, well, all of you remind me of something, Sherilyn Ifill, who is a very well-known lawyer who used to be the head of the NAACP Defense Fund. She was a keynote at an event I was at. And she started by saying, I want to invite you all to not fight for what was in the past, not to restore what was, but to
Right.
imagine what it is that we need, which is what you all are saying. But I think this was a crowd that was expecting her to say, we've got to fight and sue to get back to all these rights. And she was saying, okay, that's fine, but we need to be way
No.
beyond that. We need to be thinking way beyond that. If we're going to rebuild, take the good stuff, but don't rebuild the same systems. And that's kind of what you all are
Right.
saying.
Mhm.
So I just want to see if on the question of infrastructure, I think, for an example, there are in the HIV space, there are many Black coalitions. There's United We Rise, there's Prep and Black America, Black South Rising, History, and others. And they all have a distinctive focus. But I'm wondering if, not just those groups, but other groups, like what kinds of collaborations, what kinds of, practices, systems, what's sort of tangibly, do you think, as a first step, how do we create collaborations and partnerships? I mean, I think some of you have already started to talk about that, but have those conversations about what we need as a community, how we don't each have to be owning everything, and that we've got to figure out how to create that new thing that Sherilyn is talking about. Do you have any practical ideas about how we can start to do that, or what can we, for next year, how do we create solidarity and sort of collective action to recreate how we work together?
I definitely have a few thoughts on that, and I'll just try to be succinct here and say one, I think it is individual self-assessment for those who are in leadership. I think that's where it starts. You're torchbearers, visionaries, leaders, really assessing where you are, what you need, and what your capacity is at this time. I think two is, again, the area I mentioned earlier about pipelining leadership, identifying where there is capacity and where that capacity may be either underutilized or it could be shifted to other areas of opportunity or need. I think thirdly, and Tammy hit it in the comments there, we do need to all come together. And I would say that there's going to be a lot of conferences next year. We'll see each other on the circuit, and I think that's needful. It has its place, but I think it would be beyond a missed opportunity. It would be a cultural and movement failing to not come together to talk about how we collectively reimagine this new future and what infrastructure is needed to sustain that, or to build it and sustain it. But I also think too, this is point number four, I think collabs are crucial, but back to the point that Catherine made, any kind of performative partnership, don't waste your time there. That's like a tree pumping, nutrients to a dead branch or a dead leaf. Let that go and channel your energies elsewhere. But the 600-pound gorilla in the room is that how you gonna pay for it? And I think that's where a lot of allegiances get tested. I think that's where a lot of ideas fall apart. And I think that we've got to really be reimagining what that component of it looks like. And Dazon, you mentioned this word earlier. I'm going to bring it back now, and that is ego. I sat in a room at a conference earlier this year. They wanted to bring all the leaders together. Okay, fine. It was great. Big boardroom at the hotel, and we're all sitting around talking about, man, this is crazy what's going on with this regime. But the tough question was going to be, and I didn't have a problem asking it, who among us is willing to say, maybe it's time for me to sit down. I've been in leadership 10, 12, 20, 30, 40 years. I promise you, you don't have all the answers. I promise you, you don't have the best ideas. Maybe you don't even have any new ideas. We need to examine, hey, you do this and I do that. You're better at this than I am. We can give that up so you can do this. And these are tough conversations, but they're necessary. And I don't think there's going to be a shortage of funding. I just think there's going to be less funding flowing to more places, to as many places. And those who are best positioned through these networks, best positioned in terms of their infrastructure, best positioned in terms of their existing impact and their ability to craft and bring others on board for some future, some Afrocentric future, those will be the ones who will receive those opportunities for funding. So 4 or 5 points there, and I'll stop.
Yeah.
I think that one thing, and I'll be quick, Jason. I think one thing, well, two things that come up for me as you ask that question. One is as it relates to like some folks who have been in leadership for many years, I don't know if the question is about stepping down as it is about retooling where you need to be. Right. And so thank you, Rashawn, for accepting my friendly amendment. And I say that just even looking through, my years within the HIV movement, you're starting at 17 years old, and Saturday I turned 52. Right. So I have grown up in HIV. There was a time when I was a peer educator, right? I no longer serve that purpose as a peer and then shifted to outreach and from outreach to, leadership and from leadership. So the point is there has to be a self inventory and evaluation about where can I serve the greatest within the movement. Those of you who follow me know that I uplift and support many activities that are occurring. Why? Because that is a responsibility when you are in a position of influence that you can hold conversations with folks that other folks can. It's not about you, as we mentioned, ego. So that's one. Looking at and doing self assessment. Where am I of greatest impact? That's the word I was looking for. The other thing is that when we talk about coming together may not mean that we are writing for funds together. Rashawn, I actually agree with you. There's a lot of resources out here, but it may be looking at how the resources are being provided, right? Well, across the landscape, and is that effective? That's a whole nother conversation. But I want to put out, if we just kind of reimagine what a statement or position or press release looks like to have 40 Black-led organizations coming out yesterday about our collective position about World AIDS Day. What does it look like to have 50 organizations, both domestic and internationally, that is led by Black individuals taking a position on HIV care and treatment, the intersect of racism and healthcare, whatever the issue is? That's power in itself. And when I think about United We Rise, and so Chioma and Gary, get a sister correct if I'm wrong, wasn't that part of the vision? Right? Of bringing these entities together. I see domestically that there have been 4 or 5 national organizations that are supposed to speak on behalf of all of us. And they don't have the leadership that look like none of us. But these are the trusted voices and organizations for HIV nationally. So if we sit by the wayside and don't do something different, we are saying they speak for us. And many of them, they don't speak for me. Now I really am done. Days on.
Never, Lisa, never. So you raised like everybody on this call, you raised some really powerful nuggets, some gems and points. But what's interesting, and I think I said this a long time ago at one of those meetings, community meetings, summits, when we look at that issue of leadership and introspection and reflection, and I'm agreeing with Leisha on this one is about retooling because for some of us, a part of why we're still here is because it's not just because we found a career, it's not because we found a good job, because we had to make these, we had to build these, and it doesn't look like anything what the big organizations that are led by people who came in, got hired in or contracted in and are making a lot more. Um, it's because it's my life purpose. And I think that's the thing for a lot of people. It's not everybody. Some people they will burn out, move on and find something different. But for those of us who know what God put me here for and what the mission is, then the duty is to stay on the path but know that without going away, you can get out of the way, right? And so I think that that has to be explored and examined more collectively because all of the structures around nonprofitness try and tell you how it goes in a certain way when the truth of it is it has to go your way. It has to go the way best
Yeah.
for the organization. It has to go the way best for the community that you're serving and that you still live in and intend to serve until you don't breathe anymore. That at least let me use the I statement for that. Um, so you can earn income from somewhere, and that's a thing. But to be a part of the change that you came in for, I started in anti-apartheid activism. I'm still doing that level of kind of work. Started in abortion and reproductive health and rights. I'm still doing that work in a different way. Started with the whole HIV and STI piece and sexual health and well-being. Still going to be doing that work when I'm not in this position. So I hear what you're saying, and we need to have those conversations too about where all this wisdom does go. Where does it land? And how does it bridge with the new wisdom that's coming in with the generations that do things different, say things different, hold things different, engage in different, all of that, and are making it work somehow, right? And so I think that that's a critical piece. The other thing, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, kept coming up in my head is it may not be what you were saying, Leisha, is what if it's the opposite, where what happens if all us went dark? What happens if all of us went into our own space, had these conversations in secret, had these conversations in safer ways? I mean, when you think about how they planned the March on Washington and that they met all up at the Penn Center that nobody else knew about, right? um, Penn Center being, on an island in the Gullah Islands, right? On the seacoast, on the South Carolina seacoast. So, where is our Underground Railroad? How are we secretly forming communication systems, physical engagement, um, where we can trust the stranger who says it's okay this way, this is how we do it, this is when you can, this is when you can't. We don't have those kinds of on ramps or off ramps in our own sector. And so I think that while we're meeting all up and out here, when you get those sponsorships or get that support or have that budget to travel to these big meetings, where's that other meeting when everybody's looked up and all of us are missing? Right? Because we're in a different conversation. You let us come together, uh-oh. So we're in a different conversation that until it's baked, until it's ready to serve, nobody knows but those who need to. That's the part that I think is absolutely critical for us. The internet will give us this opportunity now. There's all kinds of ways that we can talk and communicate and strategize and plan that locks everybody else out until we're ready to open up. How do we make that happen? How do we use technology to not just tell our story, but to write a different story for the future. What's in the future for us based on where we've come from that we know we can build? These are the kinds of things I think, Gary, in your question, that this conversation right here has to come more often, has to have different voices, has to not always be invited to the public. Um, and at the same time, there has to be some sort of public conversation so that we can distract, because that's exactly how we get in this mess in the first place. Everybody is worried about the person who is occupying and destroying the White House when that person is actually the distraction.
Mm.
That person is exactly who the powers that are actually pulling all of this crap to kill us are doing what they're doing, right? That's how they spent 70 years and released Project 2025 in 2024, knowing full well that they've been working on this for decades, out of
Right.
the sight, underground, and invisibly. If we and that means that even these people we elect, these people we who missed out on the election but still want to do something different, we always forget those. We never come back to the losers when all they did was lose an election. They're not losers in life. They're not losers in our community. So how are we going to make sure that we've created something as trustworthy as that system that nobody knew until the day it happened that somebody was going to sit down, one of those black women was going to sit down on that bus and not get up before Rosa Parks did.
Right.
She was the
Before.
public distraction.
Mhm.
The
And
plan already in
So
place.
I just want to give Catherine, did
Sorry,
you want
Catherine.
to
Sorry.
add to,
Okay, I was
have a
waiting
couple minutes left, so
patiently.
go ahead.
Um, Thank you all for your contributions. I think the only thing that I would add is what I'm hearing is that we all are feeling into what it means to hold the new and the traditional, to think about technology only in not only in the like computerized sense, but in Asian and indigenous technologies of how we can actually organize ourselves outside of these screens, how we can think about land, including being underground, the land, thinking about how we can use the stars, the water, the ways in which we have spiritually held ourselves, nourished ourselves, and survived to think about how we can actually form systems of care for ourselves. And I think that that is incredibly important when we're thinking about communing in real time, when we're also thinking about safety, and especially when we are thinking about the safety of people who are being attacked in these moments. And the one thing that I would also add is that I think we should also make space to talk about conflict transformation strategies, because in bringing people together, I don't see there being this magical kumbaya, everyone getting along, that we have to be real about personal politics, because that is what has inhibited many of the partnerships that could be possible. So, how are we thinking about transformative justice, abolitionist perspectives, ways in which we will not police each other, ways in which we understand that we are all harmed and we all commit harm at the same time, so that we can really build a muscle around the values that we want to hold as we are coming together. And I think that that should precede the ideas around just going in on work together. Like, how are we ensuring that we are aligned in terms of how we would like to move? And when harm does happen, because harm is inevitable, how will we think about amending and finding a pathway forward so that we are not just disposing of people and then having to stop the work and start the work and stop the work and start the work? Because I think that's what we're all accustomed to. So how do we move with the hurt, with the grief, and still say, I
That's
respect
right.
you, I see you, you are still valuable, you are still my sister, we can still do this together.
Catherine, you
Very
all in
well
my
said.
head. Thank
So
you. And I
we are
swear to
at
God, I
time.
need
And
somebody to,
I,
I need a
I'm gonna
snaps
have to
emoji,
hold
y'all.
up.
I
I'm gonna
need
have
an
to, we're
emoji for
at
snap.
time. I'm gonna have to hold the conversation, but I saw that Max, I missed your hand all this time. If you're still with us, do you have a quick comment that you wanted to throw in?
Love hearing from everything from all of y'all. Shout out to y'all. Thank y'all. That's all.
Okay, thanks.
Gary, I just want to say, if I
Um,
can, very, very briefly, I know we're at close. I
yeah.
just want to say
Mhm.
I affirm everything that both Alicia and Dazan are saying. I don't mean to cast any negative aspersions on those who've been in leadership and who for decades, but I love what you said, Alicia, that reframe of retooling. If you still got some fire in your belly and you're trying to get something, I am here for you. I am with you
That's
10
it.
toes down every time. Thank you, Gary, for
That's
allowing
it.
me to get that in for the record.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Rashawn.
no, thanks. Yeah, I think there are many of us who would happily figure out how to do something different. All right, so we are at time. I just want to thank our four fantastic guests, Dizon, Catherine, Rashawn, and Leisha. That was a great conversation. And thank you everybody for joining us. This will be our last couch conversation for 2025. We'll be back in February of 2026. And you can hopefully keep track of us on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you can find us, and look for our social media posts. We still do that every week. And we'll also be hosting a website for National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, and we like to have people contribute to that. So look for it in January. And if you have events or information that you want to put out, please let us know. So you can always find us at everyblackbody.org. And thanks again to this fantastic panel. And happy holidays, everybody. Be safe. Don't eat too much. And hopefully the weather will get warmer in the places it's supposed to be. And we will see you all in 2026. Ciao.